Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Christine Williams.
And you are listening to the midweek version of Fiber Talk, that 2-week, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever. It's a podcast we do a lot of.
Yes.
For people who stitch. How's that?
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to get in a couple of plugs here. One is if you're at all interested in needlework-oriented books, go and listen to Arlene Cohen's most recent video.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a a book fest. Yeah, she went to a used bookstore, and of course she has that mountain of books that behind her in the shelves. Anyway, but yeah, she got some good deals on some books, and so lots of cool books to look at there. Yep, and wraps up the thing with some more bobbin lace.
Yes.
That stuff just fascinates me. That how you just twist those things and put in pins, and out the other end comes lace. It's just amazing. So, yep. So go see Arlene Cohen on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, Arlene Cohen. I don't think there's another one, but also you can search for FlossTube and do that and find her. But she has 18 or 19 of them. I really enjoy her, but her most recent one, some really neat books. And speaking of that, we put this podcast on YouTube, FlossTube. You can search for us, Fiber Talk, on YouTube, and I do it and I label it FlossTube every time we do a podcast. So if you're a FlossTube watcher, you can subscribe to us, and then it will fall right in with the rest of your FlossTubes. We don't have video. We're not sitting here holding up whatever we bought recently in front of a camera. But I do try to put as many pictures in as I can, especially with guests who give us a lot of photos. But, you'll hear the same show, and you can just fit it right into your FlossTube viewing, listening thing.
Yeah, nice and easy.
Yep. Or go to wetalkfiber.com, subscribe, get notified every time we put something up, or just go to your favorite podcast app and subscribe to us, and you get it automatically in your phone or whatever device you use. Mm-hmm. That's what we do. And speaking of our FlossTube videos, really enjoyed doing, and a lot of people enjoying our newest one with Mary McGuire, Mary McGuire's 10 Favorite Threads video. That's on FlossTube there. And that was fun to do, and a lot of people enjoying it. Not only do you get to see 10 threads and how they're used in different things, but you also get to just ogle over Mary's stitching, which is worth it in its own right. So
sometimes you need that, though. You need to look at a good, if you don't have a good shop, especially, to be able to look at good stitching like that helps, because you're reminded of what things are supposed to look like.
Yeah. And Mary can do that. She can. She's amazing. Yeah, it's fun to when she's talking and I'm just holding the camera with my phone on there and just trying to hold it still and just staring at the stitches. Every one of them is just perfect, just laid perfect, and tension's perfect all the way around, and it's just fun to ogle it. So, yep. Fiber Talk on YouTube, FlossTube, however you do it, you can see that video. And also we have on there the tour that I did a while ago of the attic to look at samplers, and the Mary McGuire's 10 favorite stitches we did not too long ago. So, and Mary and I have a couple more ideas, more Mary McGuire stitching video coming up.
I like this.
Fun to do. Yeah, a lot of fun to do. She's got so many of them. She's got so many projects that she's done that we talk about it, and then she has to plan, and then most of them are on display at Welcome Stitchery. So she has to go in and rob the walls at Welcome Stitchery to get all the examples, and then we do them at our dining room table, and all around us we're just surrounded by framed needlework all over the place.
Yeah,
it's fun. Yep. So what are you stitching these days?
What am I stitching? I'm still working on this Shakespeare cross-stitch piece, but I figured out a way to sort of fix it. So last time we were talking about it, I was, complaining. I was puzzled because it's a cross-stitch piece and it's outlined in black, all these little characters. And the way it's designed, the outlines don't use, they cross over full stitches. So, for example, you would make a full X, and then the outline of a diagonal arm, for example, would go across the X. So half of the X is hanging out outside the outline, and that's really bothering me, right? So, because it just feels sloppy, and it looks sloppy to me. And of course I realize that, once this is done, because these characters are really tiny, it will be seen from far away, but it's still really bothering me. So what I figured out to do is, the way they have this charted is they have two versions of the chart. They have the first version, which is just the actual fill, all of the cross stitch. And then they have a second chart of exactly the same thing that shows you where the outlines go, because the outlines sort of cross over the stitching. So that way you can see exactly where everything has to be. So what I'm doing is, instead of stitching off of the cross stitch one, I'm stitching everything off the outline. And that way, where I can see that something is really only going to take up a half stitch, I'm just making half stitches instead. And so I'm basically coloring within the lines, except the stitch version of that. And it's a million times better. I'm enjoying it so much more. And now the difference between the ones that I stitched according to the way I was supposed to, the charted way, and the way that I'm stitching it now, it's night and day, because now everything is filled, it's full. There's nothing hanging outside of the outlines that looks sloppy. So I'm enjoying it a lot more now. The only thing is that now I've got, maybe a quarter of it stitched kind of the bad way. So now I'm trying to not look at it.
Yeah, that problem.
So, yeah, because it's it's really way too much to rip out. So I'm just looking at pieces that I can maybe trim out or fill, just to make it a little bit less messy looking, I guess. But just that little alteration of following the outlines instead of following the chart, a million times better. So that's what I'm working on. And I will be working on this for quite a while, because it's gigantic. It's a pretty big piece.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that old thing, you can modify. It's okay to modify the chart that you bought for yourself, and to modify the instructions to suit what you want, the look you want. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a thing.
I don't understand why you would have stitches that stick outside of an outline. I haven't done enough cross stitch and more modern cross stitch to know, but it just seems kind of silly when you could just do half stitches, just come up through the center of the cloth instead of going, do you know what I'm saying? Why wouldn't you do quarter stitches like that?
But you're doing it on linen instead of Aida, right?
No, I'm doing it on Aida cloth.
So you're coming up in that middle box then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you sure is it the lines, are they just for the back stitch, and the plan is to just back stitch over a full cross?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're basically making a channel for that back stitch by splitting the stitch.
Well, what I'm doing is, if the back stitch, and it happens more with its diagonals, really where it happens. And sometimes the diagonals are, if you're stitching up one and over two, that's one thing. But if it's, especially if it's up one over one, where the diagonal is straight across one stitch, they have you stitching the full stitch. So half of the stitch is hanging out outside the outline.
Oh, I see.
So to me, that's, I stitched the underneath the diagonal, that along the line that the outline would be. And then I stitched half of what would be, inside the line, and then not stitch the other part. And then it looks fine, as opposed to the other way, where you have half the stitch hanging outside the outline, where it just looks, pixelated and kind of just sloppy.
Yeah. Well, I know that when I did that stocking that took me 30 years, not straight, but to do, that one has a lot of half and quarter stitches. And I didn't mind it, but I know a lot of people will not do a cross stitch if it has half and quarter stitches. And I don't see them as that big of a deal. And plus they do just those kinds of things for you They clean up a line. They round what should be a curve better. They eliminate a lot of that pixelated look. And I think they should be used more often, but I know it's a big turnoff for a lot of people. They just want to make just full X's. So, maybe by making this modification, you're just going that extra step to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just intended to be a very beginnery piece. And that was fine, but now I'm getting bothered because things look messy.
Yeah.
So, and it's an easy fix. Like I said, I don't know why the quarters and half stitches would be problematic. Especially in linen where it's kind of soft. I guess if you just want to sit and cross stitch, then I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a tiny little bit of effort that makes such a difference. Now I'm stitching a piece where, 2 weeks ago when I was working on it, I was, debating, do I even want to finish this? So that brings up another topic actually, which is what do you do when you're, some portion of the way through a project, right? And it looked good in a chart or it looked good in a magazine or something like that. And maybe you decided to change the colors or maybe you're doing it exactly the way it's charted. And at some point you look at it and you say, I don't like this. I just don't like it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then but you've already invested time into it. So it becomes this whole game theory thing of, well, I've invested time in it. So now do I say I cut my losses? I just don't like this thing. So I'm going to give myself permission to put it down and not stitch it, maybe put it away for a month and see if a month later you like it more, but put it down. And then if you don't like it in a month and you look at it and you say, yep, still don't like it, give it away to somebody else that might want to finish it or just get rid of it altogether, or do you just sit there and struggle and keep doing it?
No, that I will not do. No, I've got several that that are that very thing where I got going and I just didn't like it. And so I tend to put them away and move on to something else and then hope that someday I'll come along and I'll like it again or it just never gets done. But no, I don't force myself. I'll force myself through sections that I don't like because there's other things I like that I want to get to. I'll force that. But if I just don't like a project, no, I'll just set it aside and come back to it some other time. It's not worth it. This is supposed to be fun. And no, that's happened to me. I know that happens. You see something, you're in just that mood and it just looks like, oh, this would be great fun. And then, you go, oh man, I just hate doing this. I don't even want to look at it. Yeah, just put it away.
Right.
No, I don't. I wouldn't. No, I don't think so. Don't force yourself ever.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but it's hard because you've kitted the thing, you've
right.
made, you've invested in everything, and again, it's that thing, and we do this. It's not just needlework. You do this with lots of things, a book or some other kind of project where you get halfway through and you just have this idea that if you've invested the time, then you need to finish it because you've otherwise you've wasted your time. But then by finishing it, now you've wasted double the time.
Right. See, I won't finish a book I don't like for the same reason. Many books through the years.
Nature. It's our nature to do this silly thing that we do. So with this project, that's kind of where I got to it before I figured out this fix was I'm looking at it and saying, I hate this thing. Like I really don't like it at all. Like I like the idea of it. But the way it's charted, it's just ugly because it's just clunky looking, it's not, it just, ew. And I just wasn't enjoying it at all. So now it's tolerable. And I really do like the subject matter. So I'm going to finish it. And because it is a relaxing piece because it's so easy to do. So it's got that benefit going for it. So now that I've gotten it to a place where I can stitch it and I don't hate it. Now I can still do it. Okay.
Because see, the other way around that is if there are parts you like, is to every few days pick up and say I'm going to do an hour of this and just see if I can get past it.
Yeah.
But no, I won't. No, if I get to that point where geez, I just don't like this thing. No, I'm not stitching it. No, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, see,
and I think little things like that I've had an easier time putting down. But once you've invested, once you're into something, you kind of feel like you have to see it through.
Right.
And
yeah. Now, see, I have a big cross stitch thing that I bought a long time ago. Great big honking piece of expensive linen, big piece. And I started it and I just hated it right out of the gate. It's like, what was I thinking? And so I just quit on the thing and ripped the stitches out. And now I have this big piece of linen I'll just use somewhere else. And
so what did you hate about it? Did you just hate the stitching, or did you hate the piece and decided that it's nothing that you would ever like? Like what was it about it that you decided you didn't like?
Well, it was a series of Christmas. It was a Christmas thing, and it was like this Christmas town thing. Those little things that people stitch, and it's a whole bunch of buildings in a town. And I started it, and I was going to do it all on this big piece of linen, and I just didn't care. I mean, it looked really cute, but I mean, I just I stitched like a quarter of a building, and I don't even care about this. I couldn't care less if this ever gets done.
Right.
And so I just quit. And I bought, I don't know, 4 of them or so of the individual things. It was one of those once a month things that they release, building a month or whatever and you make this little town on the thing. And that was a long time ago, and I had never seen people take them and make them into individual things. Like Vonna will take to stitch one building or one little scene and then make it into its own little stand-up.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I have this big, beautiful piece of linen, which I will use for something. But I've had thoughts every now and then about going back and saying, all right, I'm going to do these as small standalone units and just do them that way. But I can't even get that excited. I haven't even done one of those because I can't get excited about it. And I think eventually I'm just going to use that piece of linen and use it for a sampler or something I care about.
Yeah. Well, and then you feel less bad about abandoning the project because then at least you've done something. You haven't wasted materials.
Right. Well, see, and that's just it. If you quit something like that even if you kitted it up, you have a bunch of threads, and you have a bunch of threads that all go together. So maybe that can be the colorway for something else.
Right.
So that goes in your stash, and you just remember, hey, I had all those threads for this one. So you can do that. And then, in my instance, I've got a gorgeous piece of linen that's, geez, I don't know, the thing is probably 3 foot long by 2 foot. I mean, I bought a big honking piece of linen.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah, it's big. And so, I mean, I can chop that up. I can do whatever I want. And so I guess I don't feel like it's a loss. If you get halfway through something and it just turns sour on you, then you've got some investment there, and that's a tough call. But
it is, and to a point though, there's something to be said for, and as I'm sitting here stitching this piece, for having spent the time and you learned something. So out of this piece, I will have learned, okay, so if I see a charted piece like this, but that's outlined, don't follow the instructions because the instructions are dumb. And there's a better way to do it, and you don't have to do everything the way that it's stated. But that, this was the first, well, technically not the first, but one of the first real cross stitch, big giant pieces that I've done as an adult. So I kind of wanted to do it once the right way, the way I've been told to do,
right,
before I start deviating. And I got, like a quarter of the way, not even a quarter of the way, like a sixth of the way. And I'm like, yeah, this is not working for me because this is just, it will drive you crazy. If it's driving me crazy, it would have driven you absolutely bonkers.
So deviate,
Yes.
Make stuff up.
That's basically what I did.
Yep.
So now it's going, much, much better.
Yep. Yeah. We all do that. I do it where you feel like if there's a design, a chart or whatever, and these are the threads and this is how you do it. There's nobody standing there with a gun to your head saying you must do it that way. You
Right.
make it up, do it your own way. There's plenty of examples of people who've left things out of a piece or added things. Was it? Oh, Vonna did one time, I remember, where I think it was a bike. She added a little bicycle with a basket of flowers in front of it because it reminded her of something in her youth. And so she just added that because she thought, and it worked out great. And but my favorite one is Arlene did a Curdy Biggs one not too long ago. And Curdy Biggs stuff can be pretty busy.
Yeah.
It has a lot of elements in it. And Arlene, I think it was her own colorway, and then she intentionally left out some of the stitches and got a really beautiful result out of it. And it was just, nobody says you had to do them all, and she just left them out and opened up some space, just some visual resting space, and got a beautiful result out of it. And worked out great.
Yeah.
Good for, yeah, it's your piece. You bought it. Do it the way you want.
Yeah, I think that part of it too is that we sit here and we're looking at a chart. And so we're sitting here looking and comparing the chart to the piece, the chart to the piece. I think what I constantly have to remind myself is once this is done and it's hanging somewhere, no one's going to have the chart.
Right, right.
So if an arm is 2 stitches longer because, I screwed up something and I decided not to fix it, no one's going to know.
That's right.
Because no one's counting it against a chart. And,
yep.
If they are, then really it's the worst party you've ever had,
that person needs to be escorted out the door. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that's the thing. You have to remember that the chart goes away and then there's no comparison. Somebody's just looking at it as it is.
Yep.
So
yeah.
That's what I'm learning.
You're trained to follow all your life to follow instructions, and then to all of a sudden not follow them it's kind of a leap of faith there. Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, a trick I learned. I learned, but I think made better. Okay, so I'm working on this sampler, and you talk about getting past stuff that's boring. The border. I got enough border done so that I could hang different motifs off of it, so I could count from the border to place different motifs. So I got enough of that done, and then there was an alphabet that went all the way across. Oh, I thought I'd never get done. So I got that done, and now I can do the little motifs, which is what really excites me about this. So I'm having a great deal of fun with a flower pot or a tree or whatever it is. And those are fun because then you sit down and in a session you complete something. And
yes.
So I'm having fun doing that. But I was sitting there one night just last week, and I'm looking back and forth. The chart's on the table to my left, and the stitching is right in front of me. And I'm looking back and forth, and I'm counting and making sure I place it correctly. And I remembered somebody saying that one of the tricks they use was to take and copy the chart and then lay it or put it or pin it to their stitching cloth so it's right there. So they just have to look a little bit, just look over a little bit to see what it is. And I thought, wait a minute, let me take that one step further. So I went and copied the chart, and then I cut out each of the motifs that I was stitching, just cut out that little pot of flowers.
Right.
And then I just took a needle and stuck it through that printout through the cloth right under my magnifier, right next to where I'm stitching. So I don't have to look anywhere. It's right there, and it's magnified, and it's right next to my stitching. And I'm liking it.
I think that's really smart.
Yeah,
I really do. And so okay, here's the question then. How do you landmark those things? Because the motifs are kind of floating around out there, right? So you have to go back to the original chart, or are you making little marks on the canvas or the linen where you are going to put things? Because the piece that I'm doing now is very much like that. It's all motifs. There's no border or anything. So everything feeds off of, the motif next to it.
Right. Well, most people will say to grid the chart. So take thread and just do running stitches through the linen at 10-point intervals, just like the chart itself is lopped off.
Yeah,
at 10.
yeah.
So a lot of people will do that and then just pull the threads out at the end. And some people actually write on the canvas. I don't like writing on the ground cloth. I don't like that. I don't like marking on it. So I'll never do that. But to do just running sewing thread through, a lot of people do that, but I don't. That's where I say I stitch the border, and then
use that.
Yeah, and then okay, I got to be at this spot in the border, and 2 threads down is the first stitch of this motif, and then I'll build it off of there. So then I just so I do the border, like on this sampler, I did the border all the way across and about a quarter of the way down. So that'll allow me to do the basically the upper quarter of the sampler without having to do more border.
Right.
And then I just work I tend to work left to upper left is where I tend to start everything. So I work left to right, and then I just build off of that. And then at the top, there's this alphabet that goes all the way across, and it has a single row of X's underneath it, just a single row band underneath it. So then I can line up my different motifs under that, and that's how I do it, and I just mark it that way. I just stitch it that way, and it works out. I mean, I double and triple and quadruple count to make sure I'm in the right spot. But even so, with a sampler, like I'm on 40 count 1/2. If I'm off left or right by a stitch, really, it's not going to matter.
But, right, exactly.
Yeah, but that's how I do it. But I know most people that especially do samplers, most people will grid them every 10 stitches using thread or whatever.
And I think having done this now, I think I probably would do that. I don't know if I'd do every 10, but even if I did every 20, just to give a little bit of a landmark, I think it would make it easier.
Yeah. I mean, I'm told it makes it go faster and cuts down on errors, but I don't
Definitely
know.
Faster.
Yeah. I should try it, but I don't know.
There's something about it where it feels like it's just so much work to do.
Yeah.
Like, how lazy am I, really?
There's that. Yeah, there's that. Because, how long does it take to just drag a piece of sewing thread up and down in a grid? Yeah, come on.
Yeah, not really that long at all. So.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Everybody has their way, and for right now, the sampler is working out just this way, the way I tend to do it. So I'm fine with it. But yeah, so cutting out those little motifs and putting it right under the magnifier, I'm counting that as a victory. Yep.
Yeah, that's clever. That is definitely a good idea. I like it.
Yep. Liking that. And, pin stitch. Boy, am I really glad I tripped over the pin stitch. Holy smokes. Especially
because then you can start in the middle.
Right. Start anywhere. And I don't have to do way stitches or anything. I just start with a pin stitch and go. And, it's so nice. And then I've been, like with that alphabet, I don't like carrying, there's only one stitch between each letter, but I still don't like carrying the thread. So I was ending off each letter with a pin stitch, and you can't even see it. Can't even see it. I ended it off the way Nicola at Hands Across the Sea Samplers, her video that shows how to do pin stitch with one thread when you're doing 1/2. And I'm just ending off each letter. So the back is, there's no carryover from letter to letter or anything. It's worked out great. Yeah. Yep.
That is really nice. Yeah. So then, pretty much the sampler is doing for you what it did for young girls originally, which is teaching you how to stitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah. I've learned quite a bit just doing the little bit that I've done in this sampler. And now this sampler, the chart book shows the original, which is all dirty and grimy and yellowed and all those things, and it shows just a little bit of the new, what I'm stitching. So so I have yet to see a picture, and I can't find anybody who's done this sampler. And I found there have been people who said they owned it, but they never did it. So now each time I do a motif, it's like a little treat, a little surprise, because I'm getting to see what it looks like with fresh thread and, all clean and everything, because I can't just look at a picture and see it. And so that's kind of fun in its own right. Each one is kind of its own little surprise. So, yeah, having fun with it. Having fun. Yep. Let's see. What else did I have? Oh, yeah, I had those things. Yes. The pin stitch. Oh, man, you got to do that. You got to do that pin stitch. That's, Nicola has it, and then Vonna has one for how she does the pin stitch with cross stitching. And that's the way I start everything. By the underlying cross, I do that in 2 parts, going down through the center. That's how I'm starting them. And then the ending pin stitch, I'm doing the way Nicola does it. So, yeah, really, really liking that. It's working out great. Yep.
And it takes a little bit of practice, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it's pretty simple.
Right. Oh, yeah, yeah. And you save a lot of thread. You don't think about it, but yeah, you save a lot of thread, and get just as secure of a beginning and ending as you would any other method. So it's a real bonus, especially when you're stitching with silk. Saving thread is not a terrible thing.
No.
Yeah. So yep, enjoying that. And did I tell? I don't think I told that I made I used the Vonna pattern and made a cover for my magnifier with the sewing machine.
No, well, you left off that you had bought a sewing machine and
Yes.
you were going to try.
Well, I did, and I made the first one, and learned quickly that your standard stitch length is 2.5 millimeters or something like that, 2.5, whatever that is, whatever the measurement is. Mm-hmm. Well, I started at 0 with stitch length.
Stitching it, over and over again in one space.
That was not working well, and then I did a little reading and saw that the normal is 2.5. So I put it on that. So that worked better, as you can imagine. And then I made the first one just using, because she suggests you line it with felt. So I just went and got some felt from Joann's Fabric and some fabric. And she says, just make it the same size as the felt. Okay, did that. Got it all sewed up the way she said to do it. And it's too small for my magnifier. My magnifier's like 1 inch wider. But halfway through it, I knew it wasn't going to fit, but I finished it just because, for the exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I went back and put together 2 pieces of felt, sewed them together, and then cut them, and then made one, and it fits perfect. And then I was looking for heavier cloth because I just got regular old cheap cotton cloth from Joann Fabrics, half off for a fat quarter or whatever it is. I don't know. And it was just flimsy cloth, and I wanted something heavier. Well, turns out Marga had a bunch of leftover upholstery cloth from some chairs she had recovered.
Oh, that's pretty pretty stocky.
It was. So I made mine double width out of that, and so now I have it's a stocky one, but yeah, it's a good firm cover for the magnifier. But it worked out great. Vonna's instructions. It actually looked like I almost had a clue. Yeah. Just don't put a straight edge against the line of sewing, because it's a little wonky.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. And sewing through upholstery fabric is it's not that easy to do. So I imagine the other thing that you must have learned as well is thread tension is key.
Yes.
Especially when you're changing from one fabric to another, because every, density and thickness of fabric is going to require different tension. And that's usually the thing that kind of frustrates people the most is if you have the wrong tension and the bobbin thread starts balling up on the back, and then you just have a giant knot and you don't know how to fix it, that's the most frustrating thing, I think. But then once you figure out that that's just thread tension and you can adjust it, once you know how to do it, things get a lot easier.
Yeah, that bobbin, that cost me the better part of 3 hours one night.
Why?
I could not get it. I couldn't get it in and get it behind the tension spring the way it was supposed to be. And I kept making dumb mistakes, and I was getting tired, and so I was making dumber mistakes. I just couldn't get it to work. And then finally I just took it all apart and went back and did it from scratch and got it to go. But it's not as automatic as I think it should be on my machine. The upper part, the threading from the spool, that's easy. But that bobbin was driving me nuts. Yeah, it was better part of the night, and yeah, I had several pieces of cloth with the bottom thread all knotted up on the bottom, and because there was no tension, and it was just it was ugly.
Yep.
I was not happy.
You just have to look at the way they wrap it, because the bobbin should sit in there. So that's the other thing you learn, right? It matters whether it goes clockwise or counterclockwise. And most sewing machines, right when you open up where the bobbin goes, it shows you a diagram of exactly how to do it, right? It usually pulls the thread counterclockwise off. And if you don't do it counterclockwise, you do it the other way, it doesn't work. So,
Now I'm going to give you a tip. If you follow those instructions, it will work.
Yes.
But if you sit there for an hour with the bobbin unrolling clockwise, wondering why you can't get it to get under the tension spring and stay there.
Yeah.
See, then, that was dumb mistake number one. And I just, what am I, I looked and I'm following all the instructions, and what am I, and then I realized, turn this bobbin over, you idiot.
But you wouldn't, it's the kind of thing that you wouldn't think of if you didn't know to look, right?
Right.
And a lot of them will have a little tiny diagram there. But even if you're looking at the diagram, it isn't something you necessarily pick up on that matters. So if you're learning to sew, the bobbin matters, and you have to make it go in the right direction, because if it spins the wrong way, it's not going to work. So if everything is getting gunked up, look at that diagram and make sure that your thread is pulling off in the right direction.
I looked at it 100 times.
Yeah.
Still had it wrong. And I have no idea what I did, and it was just one of those, you idiot.
Yeah. Well, you got to figure it out, and every machine is a little different. Everyone's going to have a little bit of its own personality. I had an old Singer for, 25 years probably, and then I had to move, and it was, dirt simple. It was threaded like an old Singer machine. There was nothing fancy about it. You threaded the machine itself, and then that finally kicked the bucket, and I had to get another machine, and I bought this Brother machine, and it had like a self-threading thread, so the top thread on the spool, you put it in this little cartridge, and then you just kind of pulled a lever, and it self-threaded through the machine.
Really? Wow.
It was a disaster. It was, because it was like an embroidery machine, it had all these fancy stitches and everything. It was a disaster, because it did this thing, but it really never did it well. And it was just a giant pain to do. And so eventually I just got rid of it, and I went back to the most basic machine I could find, which also happens to be the least expensive too, because it's just the most basic machine. And back to, threading the thread, by hand all the way through the machine, and works like a charm. And there's nothing fancy. Really, all you need to be able to do is sew forwards and a little bit backwards, and maybe make a buttonhole and change the foot so you can sew next to piping. Like, really, that's it. If you can go forward and zigzag, there's not really much else you need to do.
Yep.
For the kind of thing that we're doing.
I'm learning that, yeah. I do like I have a foot, and it does the overstitch, where it stitches thread. I haven't really studied how it does, but anyway, over the edge, which is that was the main reason I got it, was to put an edge on cloth so it won't unravel. And
like a blanket stitch.
Yeah, that does a beautiful job of that. That's perfect. I'm just, I'll take that. The machine just for that is fine with me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But if you don't have that, a good old fashioned, just a zigzag will do.
Yep. Yeah, I've used that, but this is perfect. So I'm just happy as a clam with that. But I can't see, mine is all manual thread. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, that's all you need.
It's a manual thread, and but the bobbin, that cost me a good evening there. I was not happy. Not happy. Nope. All right, that's going to be it.
Okie doke.
So that's it for this one. Sunday, Vonna returns.
Yes.
We're excited about that, and we're going to. I've been mentioning some of these things I'm learning during my 10,000 hour journey. Well, that's what Vonna's putting together, a list of things she's learned. So that'll be fun.
Definitely.
Yep. So the twisted one on Sunday, and yeah, watch Mary McGuire's 10 favorite threads on Fiber Talk FlossTube. It's a lot of fun. That's it.
There we go.